how much do designers and other creatives get paid in India? If you have a bunch of friends who are already in the industry, you probably have some figures in mind as you're beginning to watch this. But in this video, we're going to go through a survey report that was done with close to 2,000 participants by Indifolio. In this, they went through a couple different roles, namely UI UX design, graphic design, as well as a few others like animation and video production. The key to a video like this is I don't want to discourage you by showing you how much you're not making, but rather the intention of this video is to show you some statistical data on how salaries in the industry are today. Personally, I've hired a lot of graphic designers, UI UX designers, video editors in my career as a founder and as a head of design. But in this video, I want to give you that special advantage, give you a behind the scenes look at what salaries look like and how you can plan your growth. So let's get started. All right, let's jump in. So this is of course a 2024 survey, and what you need to know before we jump in is these are some of the roles that they surveyed and found data on. So definitely you can check this PDF out much later after watching this video if you want to go deeper. But what you need to know is, yes, this is India data. Yes, there were a total of close to 2,000 participants across around 550 companies. What this also includes is city-based data. So of course, we kind of assume that since a lot of the top startups are based in Bangalore, maybe a lot of agencies in Bombay, other companies in Delhi, there's overall a lot of cities included, right? So 76 cities. So not just tier one data. A good split of experience, but also the different types of roles. So working at an agency, working at a corporate, freelance, and then a small percentage, maybe not enough academic. Now, overall, where I want to start with this is let's talk about graphic design and illustration. Personally, I think graphic design is still a really good role to go for, especially if you're able to bring in a unique taste, if you're able to really integrate AI into your tools and see, does it really give me an advantage compared to somebody who was maybe 6 to 10 years or even more. The advantage that AI tools have brought is they don't take away all of graphic design. However, this right here, you have the opportunity to create outputs that might be quite as good or quite comparable with folks who are even senior. But experience really matters, right? Your process and the projects under your belt, right? So experience is a very top thing here. Now, when it comes to graphic design salaries, starting salaries, according to this survey, are around 27,000 rupees. Now, that is not really good. It's around 3 to 4 LPA. The insight here that they've mentioned is early in your career, it's a good idea to freelance. Beyond that, as you get more experience, more types of campaigns and projects that you worked on, that really helps you get a job where that becomes really valuable. Something interesting I want you to observe though, most people might stop at this 27,000 and be like, yo, about 45% of folks are in this range. About a good, it looks like about 25% are in the 3 to 6 range. And a good 30% of folks are in the 6 to 10 range, right? So clearly it does show that even with 0 to 2 years experience, now 0 to 2, I would count that as starting salary, right? Starting salary does not mean totally fresh, right? The very first project you do might be an internship, it might be some freelance, but in those first 2 crucial years, you want to do more projects, you want to do a variety of projects, and ideally you want to do enough to build your process and tool capability, right? Beyond that, taste will take you very far with something like this. But graphic design, definitely not my specialty. Yes, I have hired designers before, but personally, I have never really worked as a graphic designer. I got my start in UI UX design. So let's jump to that and see what the scene is. For UI UX design, they interviewed about 420 participants. These are the types of titles that you would come across. Now, the representation here, we have a lot of folks in the 0 to 2 year range. It does seem like a lot of these folks are in their company for a short amount of time, at least from this data. Beyond that though, you can see most people do have bachelor degrees. However, very good amount of folks are no formal education, which probably means dropped out or self-taught. And when I say self-taught, I also mean via online courses. Now, jumping one level deeper, a very interesting thing to observe here is there's a good chunk of people, almost equal by the way, 36% and 32%, people doing full time and people doing freelance. But there's a bunch of folks that just seem to be doing both. So clearly, it is one of the roles where you could, if you have the time, bandwidth, capability, you could do stuff on the side that can supplement your income. It also looks like a bunch of the folks here have this work from anywhere capability, right? So it does give you some location freedom. The second number here is hybrid, which also is some location freedom, but maybe you have to come into the office a few times a week or a few times a quarter. Now, the two prominent ones that I see here in terms of work, most people working in corporate jobs, so companies like these, a good chunk of folks working at agencies as well. Now, these agencies definitely also service a lot of these corporate clients. The bigger the agency gets, the more likely that they work for massive companies like this for, much bigger amounts of money. A small amount of freelance, right? I was quite surprised by this. Very few pure freelance setup in this. Okay, let's move forward though. The average starting salary seems to be 36,000. Now, let's break this apart, right? We can see here that there is a small chunk of folks who are 3 lakhs or under. My guess is these folks, you're doing maybe an internship for a couple of months, or you're doing some small freelance project, create this for me, create a website for me, help me, create something for my app, some features, help me create a first version of something. A lot of early stage right here. If you're working at a really small company in a really small town, very likely that you would start somewhere in this range. What was interesting though, right? And I know a lot of you are in this 0 to 2 year range. What was interesting though is 3 to 6 lakhs per annum has a good amount of representation as well. And 6 to 10 lakhs being kind of the biggest number here, right? Like there's 27% representation here. So it does go to show that even though you might have only 0 to 2 years of experience, it's not exactly about the years of experience. It's about your experiences per year. It's definitely possible to do interesting projects, collaborations, work with other designers, work with business owners, friends of yours, or people you know who are working on businesses or agencies. It's definitely possible also to do a bunch of self-initiated projects, internships, come to Bangalore, work for some of the companies here. It is definitely possible to get this range. What's even more positive about this though is we have the 10 to 15 LPAs, we've got the 15 to 25, and even though small, we've got a 25 to 40 LPA here as well. So for 4%, now that's a very small number, but ideally, right, the way I would interpret this as somebody who's starting out is, hey, if I'm starting out, the very first thing I want to do is find out how I can make at least this. Now, of course, you might want to directly get 10 to 15 LPA, right? Just to give you an example, in 2015, when I started out, the numbers were a bit similar, although the industry was much smaller, while the numbers were pretty similar. I had about 2 years of freelance experience. I had 2 internships that I had done, but no full-time experience, no agency experience. And I was able to get a salary of this range for my first full-time job, right? So that still exists today is what this tells me. But for you who's starting out, my suggestion would be, yes, it would be awesome to, immediately get a high paying job. But this is one of those fields where experience matters. Tools are easy to learn, but creating something impactful with the tools takes time. There is a good amount of theory, concepts, cross-domain information, understanding things from tech, understanding things from product, understanding things from business, of course. And then there's understanding the user psychology, understanding how to design for specific platforms like for web, for iOS, for Android. There's a good understanding of patterns, design patterns when it comes to designing for B2C, designing for B2B. All this stuff does take time, is what I will say. But if you're a UI UX designer, my suggestion, get started with working on projects, learn the tools along the way, find a network of people who you can also kind of collaborate with, get help from, and, kind of have a squad, have a design squad. but make your move progressively, right? Some interesting points here as well. It really helps to freelance early in your career. Now, a misconception I see a lot of folks do is they're like, hey, why would somebody hire me as a freelancer? Isn't that for really experienced people? But that's couldn't be more further from the truth. Just think about it. In the market, there are folks who really need design services, who need something done that a designer could help with. But there's a huge amount of folks who do not have the budget to hire a full-time designer and pay them an annual salary. At the same time, a lot of them cannot even afford experienced freelancers who might charge you something like 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, up to 20, 30 lakhs per project. They cannot hire a really good agency out there because, hey, agencies have a minimum of 20 to 40 lakhs per project. That's how much they charge in India, right? So keep this in mind when you're starting out, right? You want to definitely hit this number first. That should be your first milestone, right? I would say this as your first income, good place to be. But beyond that, start stacking up and figure out how you can make your way forward. Do freelance, definitely freelance. If you want some insights on that, I've written a book called Pajama Profit, but you can also check out this video on my channel that goes into a little bit more depth on how you can find clients. Now, in terms of career growth, you can see that at the 5+ year mark, right? So when we go here, you can see that this is a massive segment that starts to grow. Now, this is the 40 lakhs per annum plus. At this range, a lot, you usually take on a more senior role, which means you're managing folks, or you might start an agency. And if you're starting an agency, per client, you could probably get 10,000, 20,000, up to $50,000 per client. So the kind of salary you would pay yourself is maybe 40 LPA right here. But if you're at a startup, you would get equity if you're in leadership positions. And if you're doing an agency, you probably have agency income, and this is probably just your annual salary. Besides that, though, I can clearly see from this trend, there is a certain middle here, right? This seems to be a big representation, and this is the 15 to 25 LPA. This does seem to be where a lot of folks kind of end up. In fact, I have a very strong chance if you are one of those folks who have this much experience, in fact, maybe even not 6 to 10, right? Maybe this also includes you've worked as a designer, you know how to design, you worked at some companies, you've worked with other designers before. Maybe you're in your second or third job, you've tried freelancing a little bit on the side. Very likely that you find yourself in this zone. Now, I can tell you this, folks tend to stay in this zone for a couple of years, right? This one is a hard one to crack. But again, if you have the time, if you want to try this out, it's always possible to have side hustles. Now, this could be products or projects that you launch on your own. It's always possible to do agency, freelance on the side. In fact, I've also seen a lot of designers, end up doing non-design businesses, right? Like opening a cafe or starting a clothing brand. Besides that, a common question folks have is about degree. Do I need a design degree? Now, the honest truth is, if you are somebody who did computer science, like I did graduated computer science from Manipal in 2015, you will have a massive advantage in UI UX, right? So computer science engineers do tend to have an advantage because in the end, we're working with information systems, right? So a design team, a UI UX design team, the teams that they collaborate with the most are developers and then product managers, right? These two are the core teams you would collaborate with. So having a computer science degree, I found quite useful. All right. Besides that, though, bachelor's and master's. Now, I am aware of there's a lot of now BDes, bachelor's of design programs out there. Personally, I'm not so sure on how up to date they are with the curriculum, with the industry, because our industry, it moves at the speed of software. One update and you have a bunch of new possibilities and things can really change. So one thing that this does tell me, though, if you're going for a BDes, definitely look into how relevant their program is for the industry. Maybe doing a BDes is better than doing a BTech, a computer science degree, right? Firstly, though, I don't know. I have not been through a BDes myself. When it comes to masters, now I would say doing a master's in an Indian college probably a nice experience if they have a good campus. You can also freelance maybe while you're studying. But my suggestion, if you're going for masters, go abroad, right? Whether that's if you have the budget, if you have the capability to do so. As someone who spent the last 4 years living in Copenhagen in Denmark, I can tell you the world is a much bigger place than we imagine, right? Of course, we get a lot of our information from the internet, but I would say as a designer, it can really make you more well-rounded, give you exposure into other areas like, design, marketing, architecture, to live a totally different lifestyle with a totally different set of people who have totally different cultural values. I would say it's a big learning, right? So if you are considering your master's, my suggestion, see if you can use that time to spend some time in a different country, maybe even get a job there afterwards. The other point they mentioned here is there does seem to be a correlation between education and earnings, which means whether it's formal education or diplomas, it does help. Now, of course, as somebody who runs 10K designers, a literal cohort based program for UI UX designers, this is not just me trying to convince you to enroll, although, clearly the 1,400 folks that have been through our program, I have seen the massive benefits they get from the mentors they're able to connect with who work at these amazing companies, the projects that they get to work on, which are a lot of early stage Y Combinator projects. And they also get a chance to understand from people who are in the industry, right? So, me, I personally teach every single class. We also have an instructor, Jenny, who's based in Dallas, Texas. So he gives you even a global perspective on things. And the deep network that we have, folks, in Bangalore, it's really useful to be able to WhatsApp a design friend, get guidance, get career advice, and even get some design feedback. All right, folks. So that is UI UX design. If you're a UI UX designer, comment below if you can. How much do you make and what experience level, right? Personally, I would say this is quite close. Another reference that might help you is the Glassdoor data. Now, this has even more total number of respondents. So this should give you an idea that, hey, this is a fairly accurate assessment of how it is. Something that nobody tells you about creative fields is that skill matters a lot more than the experience. If you've been able to squeeze in really good projects and worked with really good people, you can get paid a lot based on what you bring to the table, right? And that is true for all creative roles. And you know this, right? Creative roles, it's all about creating things that are new. And so if you have a crazy creative capability, and if you're able to build that, right? This is not exactly a talent that you're born with. It's practice. It's being in the trenches, making things happen, trying stuff out, failing, trying again, and improving with every step. There's a strong potential for outlier talent to directly jump to, maybe these ranges in the middle right here, even with 0 to 3 years of experience. I have personally seen multiple folks from 10K designers in the 0 to 3 experience range end up making 15, 20 LPA, the middle of this curve. Now that we've gone through some of the current data, we can answer this question, which is what's the scope of these roles moving forward? Now, specifically for graphic design, I can say this. In India, we're living through a very, very consumerist time right now. There's a lot more D2C brands, a lot more companies trying to stand out on social media, on reels. There's also a lot of in-person experiences, beautiful cafes, concerts are on the rise in India, experience design around that, as well as all the graphic design around it. I think graphic design is due for a resurgence, and especially in India right now, good time to be a graphic designer. However, it does require a lot of mindset shifts. It's not the same graphic design that maybe we knew from the past. So a new opportunity for people who want to enter into it right now. But UI UX design, on the other hand, the way I think about this is moving forward, is the amount of tech in our lives going to go up or down? Now, personally, I'm making a bet only in one direction. We, of course, just in our everyday lives, the amount of Zepto, Blinkit, Swiggy, Uber, Ola, Rapido, Namayatri, a lot of these consumer apps have gone up for us as well as broad amounts of the Indian audience. What that means is people want to do more things done in their offline world using these apps and websites. So, on that front, you can expect that to go up over the next couple of years in India. Now, Talking about AI here, specifically for UI UX design, there's going to be a brand new category of AI tools and AI agents. Now, what this might mean is AI agents take over a lot of the SaaS industry. AI tools take over, of course, a lot of the design workflows, but also create a brand new, category in the same way that AR, VR has promised in the past. In the same way that last decade, before all of us had smartphones, the UI UX design world was limited to websites and dashboards. Now, computers aren't even the primary way we interact with technology, it's phones. So, my bet is that's going to go up. Now, it will definitely require keeping up with the industry. And I think the thing that a lot of people need to realize about creative careers is you have to constantly refresh, redefine, reinvent yourself every couple of years. And the reason why is because the industry does that too. Every couple of years, the consumer trends, the dominant platforms, how people use technology keeps changing. So it does require effort to keep up. Now, whether that's AI, whether that's changing consumer behavior, whether it's new platforms, that's the ride we sign up for as a creator. We are always on the edge of what's new, what's in the future whose time has come, and what can we do as designers to create new experiences, new artifacts in the world that companies can use, that people can use, and that's how this all works. So I hope that gave you something to think about. The purpose of this channel is for me to be able to share some of my learnings with you. So if you're a designer, you're somebody who wants to build a creative career, what's the number one question that's top of mind? Leave it in the comments below, and maybe we'll address this in an upcoming video or an upcoming live stream. Besides that, applications for cohort 10 are open, and cohort 10 begins in January 2025. So if you're interested in a 4-month live program where 2 times a week you and I personally meet in a live call, discuss, work on assignments, work on different interesting problem statements, this might be the opportunity for you. And if you're based in Bangalore, even more of a bonus because we now have this official clubhouse. We're calling it a clubhouse, but it's a really cool office. And we're going to be having a lot of in-person stuff. We're going to have co-working sessions. We're going to have mentor sessions, but members only. So I hope this was useful, and I'll see you around.